The storm came fast that night, white, endless, and hungry. Wind clawed at the pines, bending them like frail bones. Officer Daniel Holt could barely see the road ahead, only the ghostly flicker of his patrol headlights cutting through the snow. Dispatch had mentioned a faint distress call from an old county road, then static. No coordinates. Just a baby's cry in the background. When he finally saw the shape in the snow, a dog, shivering violently beside something small and bundled, he didn't yet know that this moment would rip open every scar he'd tried to bury. The German shepherd was half buried in snow when Daniel stopped the patrol truck. The animal didn't move at first, just stood there, stiff-legged, its eyes locked on him, breath steaming in the blizzard. Then came the sound that didn't belong in the wilderness. A muffled, human cry. "Jesus," Daniel whispered. He opened the door and stepped into the storm. The wind hit him like a wall. Snowflakes bit into his face, each one sharp as grit. He moved slowly, one gloved hand raised in front of him. "It's okay, buddy," he called over the howl of wind. "Easy." The shepherd's hackles were up, but it didn't snarl. Its body trembled violently, tail tucked low. The cry came again, from the small red bundle half buried in snow behind it. Daniel's pulse jumped. He crouched, heart hammering, and pulled off a layer of snow. Underneath, wrapped in a torn blanket, was a baby, barely 6 months old, face bluish but breathing. God Almighty! The shepherd stepped closer, pressing its body against the infant as if shielding it from him. Its fur was matted with ice, paws bleeding from cold. Daniel could see ribs beneath the coat. The dog had been here for hours, maybe all night. He slid the blanket from his shoulder and wrapped it around the baby. "You did good, pal," he murmured. "You kept her alive." The shepherd's ears twitched at his tone. When Daniel stood, the dog limped after him toward the truck, still guarding, still watching. Inside the warmth of the patrol cabin, Daniel laid the baby across the passenger seat, turned the heater full blast, and pressed his hand or chest, weak pulse, but there. He reached for the radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Holt, Unit 7 to 9. I've got a live infant. Found off County Road 12 near the tree lean. Severe exposure. Send paramedics fast." The radio hissed then crackled back. "Copy that, 7 to 9. Any sign of parents?" Daniel's eyes flicked to the shepherd curled on the floorboard, head resting near the baby's leg. Its eyes followed every movement, cautious but trusting enough now to stay close. "Negative," he said. "Just a dog. Looks like a German shepherd, female. Might belong to the family." There was a pause. "Copy that. Holt. We'll notify animal control, too. Don't bother." Daniel muttered under his breath. "She's not going anywhere." The drive back to town was slow, visibility less than 10 feet. The wipers dragged across ice, the engine groaning against the uphill climb. The baby whimpered once, a weak sound, and Daniel's gut twisted. He hadn't heard that kind of cry in years, not since the night he lost his own daughter in a snowstorm almost like this one. Her name had been Grace. She'd been 5. The accident took both her and his wife. He'd buried their ashes under the birch tree behind his old house, then buried the rest of himself in work. The shepherd lifted its head and nudged his arm, almost sensing the memory. He blinked hard, refocusing on the road. "Hang in there, kid," he murmured. "We're almost home." The hospital lights burned bright against the snow. When he pulled up, nurses rushed out, taking the baby from his arms. One of them, a small woman with tired eyes, looked up at him. "You found her out there?" "Yeah, alone, except for the dog." Her eyes flicked to the shepherd sitting obediently by the door. "Then that dog just saved a life." Daniel nodded, unable to say more. As the ER door swung closed behind the nurses, he crouched beside the shepherd. "We'll find out where you came from, girl," he said softly. "You've earned a warm meal tonight." He reached to check her collar and froze. No tag, just a strip of leather, worn and dark. But burned into the inside was a name barely legible. Misty. At the station later that night, Daniel dried the shepherd with a towel near the heater. The room smelled of wet fur and old coffee. Sheriff Tom Reddick came in, brushing snow off his coat. "Heard you pulled a miracle out there," the sheriff said, hanging his hat. "Baby stable?" "Last I heard, yeah," Daniel replied. "Hypothermia, but she's breathing steady. Reddick nodded, lowering himself into a chair. Any ID? Notes? Something to tell us who left her. Nothing. Just that dog. Misty, huh? The sheriff scratched his jaw. That name ring any bells? Daniel frowned. Maybe. There was a missing person report last week. Couple from down by Silver Creek, Lena and Brian Calloway. Their SUV went off the road during the storm. Search got called off when visibility dropped. We only found tire marks. Reddick's expression hardened. You think the baby's theirs? It fits the timeline. But if Misty belonged to them, he trailed off, staring into the dog's eyes. Then where the hell are the parents? The shepherd lowered her head on her paws, as if she knew the answer but couldn't speak it. Morning came cold and pale. The storm had passed, leaving the world coated in silence and frost. Daniel returned to the scene with 2 deputies and a rescue team. Misty rode shotgun restless, ears twitching every few seconds. They found the tire tracks first, half buried but visible. Then the wreck. The SUV had gone off the road into a ravine, nose first into a drift. The windshield was shattered. Both front seats were empty, covered in a thin crust of ice. A woman's scarf hung from the doorframe, frozen stiff. Daniel climbed down slowly, boots crunching. He brushed snow from the driver's seat. Blood on the airbag. A phone wedged under the pedal. He pulled it free. The screen was cracked, but when he pressed the side button, the lock screen flickered to life. A family photo. A man, a woman, and a baby in a pink snowsuit. The same baby he'd pulled from the snow. Misty whined from above, pacing near the edge. Where's your family, girl? Daniel whispered. Where'd they go? They searched a quarter mile outward before one of the deputies called out. Sir, over here. Daniel jogged toward the voice, lungs burning in the cold. The deputy pointed toward a half-collapsed cabin at the edge of the forest. The door was off its hinges, snow piled halfway inside. Daniel drew his flashlight and pushed through the doorway. Inside, overturned furniture, broken glass, and a small fire pit long since burned out. The smell of charred wood and something else metallic, faintly sweet. He swept the beam across the floor. Footprints. One large pair, one smaller. Woman's maybe, and something heavier dragged between them. He followed the trail until the light fell on a corner of torn fabric caught under a crate. He lifted it. A man's jacket. Inside a wallet. Brian Calloway. Damn it, Daniel muttered. Reddick crouched beside him, jaw tight. If they made it this far, maybe the storm split them up. You said the dog was with the baby. Maybe the parents went for help. Daniel looked toward the tree-lean, dark and endless. Or something went wrong. That night, Daniel sat in his kitchen with Misty lying near his feet. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the old wall clock. He poured coffee, but it went cold before he could drink it. The phone rang. It was the nurse from the hospital. Officer Holt? The baby. She's stable now. But we ran her prints through the state database. You were right. Her name's Emma Calloway. Daniel exhaled slowly. Thank God. But there's something else, the nurse said. Child Services checked the Calloway file. The parents had no living relatives. And there's a note logged by county police 3 months ago. What kind of note? Domestic disturbance. Neighbors reported shouting. Possible abuse. Daniel's throat tightened. You're saying the father. I don't know, she said quickly. It was marked resolved, but no follow-up. He hung up, staring at the floor. Misty raised her head, eyes glassy and tired. Daniel crouched beside her, running a hand through her coarse fur. You protected that kid, he whispered. But from who? Misty's ears twitched, and she gave a low, mournful sound that wasn't quite a whine. Something deeper, almost human. Daniel's gaze drifted to the dark window beyond the frost. The reflection staring back wasn't the same man who'd left the station. It was older, heavier, with a question in his eyes he didn't want to ask. What if the storm hadn't taken the Calloways? What if something else had? The next morning, the sky was a pale bruise over the horizon, the kind that promised another storm. The plows hadn't made it this far yet. So Daniel's truck crunched over ice in silence as he pulled up to the Calloway crash site again. Misty was restless in the passenger seat, pawing the door, whining low. He'd been thinking about that phone call all night. Abuse reports. No relatives. A baby left alone in a snowstorm with a dog that wouldn't leave her side. Something wasn't adding up. He stepped out, snow creaking under his boots, and called over to the two deputies combing the area. Any sign of fresh tracks? One shook his head. Nothing but the same drag marks toward that old cabin. No prints beyond that. Daniel frowned. No signs of wildlife. None. Kinda strange, isn't it? Storm like this. Figured we'd see scavengers by now. Misty barked once, sharp and short, then bolted toward the tree line. Daniel swore and followed, slipping on the ice. Misty! Wait! She didn't stop. Her paws kicked up snow as she darted into the trees, nose low, moving like she knew something the rest of them didn't. Daniel followed the tracks through brittle undergrowth until he came to a clearing and froze. At the base of a fallen spruce, half buried in snow, was a mound that didn't belong there. Misty was pawing at it, whining. Daniel crouched and brushed away the snow until he hit fabric, dark, frozen stiff. It was a man's coat, and under it an arm. Christ. He called for the deputies, and together they uncovered the rest. The body was face down, stiff as stone. When they rolled him over, Daniel recognized the face from the cracked phone photo. Brian Calloway. There was a wound at the base of his skull, blunt force, clean and hard, not from the crash. No weapon nearby. Reddick arrived an hour later, trudging through the snow with his hat pulled low. Hell of a find. Hope. Any sign of the wife? Not yet, Daniel said, staring down at the corpse. But she's out here. Somewhere. Reddick sighed through his nose. Looks like the storm covered up a lot more than just the road. Back at the station, the baby, Emma, was transferred to a foster nurse of the night. Daniel filed his report, but couldn't shake the image of Misty pawing at that body, her breath frosting the air in the same spot where the man's life had ended. He stared at the report's final line for a long time before typing 3 words. Manner of death, suspicious. When he looked up, Misty was sitting by the door again, silent, watching, waiting. You knew, he said quietly. Her tail thumped once, then went still. The next day brought new light and new questions. The coroner confirmed the obvious, skull fracture, no sign of defensive wounds. But the part that bothered Daniel most was what wasn't there. No fingerprints, the coroner said. Not on the jacket, not on the scene. Whoever did this wore gloves. And they moved the body before it froze. Moved. Daniel frowned. Why? Could be panic. Could be someone trying to hide it. He drove home that evening with the heater blowing full, and the same question grinding in his skull. Where was Lena Calloway? Misty rode beside him, eyes half lidded from exhaustion. When he parked outside his cabin, she didn't move right away, just stared at the snowdrifts like she expected something to emerge from them. Daniel poured himself a cup of coffee, fed her half a chicken breast, and sat by the window. Outside, wind swept through the birch trees, the same kind that used to whisper outside his daughter's room. For a second, he saw Grace there again, 5 years old, face pressed against the glass, laughing at the snowflakes. Then she was gone. He closed his eyes, exhaled, and whispered into the quiet. You can rest, Grace. I'll save this one. 3 days later, they found Lena Calloway, or rather, what was left of her. She was discovered half a mile downstream where the ice had broken, caught between tree roots. Her head was split at the temple, like she'd fallen, but the coroner's report said otherwise, no water in her lungs. She'd been dead before she hit the creek. When Daniel read the report, his hands tightened around the page until the paper creased. He sat back in his chair, eyes burning, and muttered, Then who the hell left that baby in the snow? The door opened behind him. Sheriff Reddick stepped in, slow, measured. Bad news confirmed? He asked. Daniel nodded. Both parents gone. Baby's the only one left breathing. Reddick took off his hat and rubbed the back of his neck. Then I guess the storm didn't kill them. Daniel looked up. You think someone else did? Reddick hesitated. I think the Callaways weren't who we thought. County records show they'd been reported missing before. Couple years ago, different name. Moved around a lot. Cash jobs. No real trail. Daniel stared at him. You're saying they were hiding? Looks that way. Reddick's gaze drifted to the floor. And get this, the cabin they ended up in belongs to a retired contractor named Joel Spence. Lived out here till last year, then disappeared. Another missing person. Yeah, and you'll like this, his dog license listed one German Shepherd. Reddick paused. Name of Misty. Daniel felt the bottom drop out of his chest. He glanced at the dog sleeping near his desk, chest rising and falling slow. That can't be, he said. You're saying the Callaways took her? Could be. Or maybe they took more than that. Reddick leaned in, lowering his voice. Listen, Holt, you've done good work here, but maybe it's time to hand the dog over to animal control, if she's evidence. Daniel cut him off. She's not evidence. She's a witness. Reddick gave a dry chuckle. A witness with 4 legs? You didn't see her out there, Daniel said, his tone sharp. She wasn't just guarding that baby. She was guarding her from something. Reddick sighed. You're too close to this. Maybe, Daniel said quietly. But maybe that's why I'll find the truth. That night, Daniel dreamed of the wreck again. The storm, the crying, the dog. Only this time, when he reached a bundle in the snow, it wasn't a baby. It was his daughter. And Misty was the one barking at him to turn back. Barking until the wind swallowed her whole. He woke before dawn, heart pounding. Misty was already sitting by the window, ears pricked, eyes locked on the tree line. Something moved out there. A shadow between the birches. Too tall to be an animal. Daniel grabbed his coat and flashlight. Stepping out into the cold, the air stung his throat as he scanned the yard. Nothing but wind and snow. Then footprints. Faint, leading away from the porch toward the woods. He followed them slowly, Misty at his side. They wound through the trees, then stopped near a broken fence post. A scrap of cloth fluttered there, dark, torn, familiar. Daniel held it up to the light. It was the same fabric as Brian Calloway's jacket. Someone had been here. Recently, when he turned back toward the house, Misty wasn't behind him anymore. He spun around. Misty! A bark answered him from deeper in the woods. Then another, sharper, alarm, not play. He ran toward it, slipping on the ice. Through the trees, his flashlight caught movement, a figure in a dark coat bolting down the slope. Misty was chasing, barking furiously. Stop! Police! Daniel shouted, lungs burning. The figure didn't stop. He slid, stumbled, caught himself, then lost sight of them both as they vanished into the gully below. When he reached the bottom, all he found was Misty, standing over something half hidden in snow. Not a person this time. A box. She whined and pawed at it until the lid came loose. Inside were papers, IDs, passports, cash, all with different names, and a small locket with a photo inside. Daniel opened it, hands trembling. A woman's face, Lena Calloway, and beside her, another man, not Brian. Written on the back, "Forever starts when he's gone." By the time Daniel got back to the station, dawn was bleeding through the clouds. He laid the box on Reddick's desk. The sheriff's jaw tightened as he looked through the contents. So she wasn't a victim, he said slowly. She was running. From her husband, Daniel said. Looks like she planned to disappear. New IDs cast the works. Reddick flipped the locket in his fingers. Then maybe Brian found out. Daniel nodded. Or maybe she found out something about him. They sat in silence for a long moment, the heater rattling against the cold. Then the sheriff asked quietly, "What about the figure you saw?" Daniel stared at the frost on the window. Could have been anyone. Could have been no one. But in his gut, he knew the truth. The storm hadn't just hidden bodies. It had hidden a trail. And whoever was out there, they weren't finished yet. That evening, he visited the hospital. Baby Emma was asleep in the nursery, cheeks pink now, breath soft. The nurse smiled when she saw him. She's getting stronger every day. You'd never guess she survived that storm. Daniel pressed a hand to the glass. She had help. He looked down. Misty sat at his feet calm, tail sweeping slowly. She's been watching over that baby since the start, the nurse said, almost like she knows her. Daniel smiled faintly. Maybe she does. When he returned home, snow had started falling again, slow. deliberate flakes that shimmered in the porch light. He hung his coat, poured himself another cup of coffee, and sat in silence. Misty curled up beside the couch, eyes finally peaceful. He thought about calling Reddick, about reporting the box of identities to the feds, but his mind wouldn't stop circling the same thought. If Lena had been running from Brian, and Brian ended up dead, then who was the man in that photo with her? And what if he had come back to finish what the storm couldn't hide? He didn't sleep that night. Neither did Misty. Because somewhere out in that white silence, something or someone was still moving. The blizzard returned 2 nights later, fiercer than before. The sky pressed low over the pines, and the whole town of Haverhill seemed to hold its breath. Power lines bowed under the wind. The world outside Daniel Holt's cabin disappeared behind white walls. Misty paced near the door, restless. Every gust made her ears twitch. Every creak turned her head. Daniel sat by the table, cleaning his service pistol out of habit, though he hadn't drawn it in years. Something deep in his gut told him the storm wasn't done taking yet. The phone rang. He picked up. Holt. Reddick's voice came through, rough and urgent. Got a situation. You better sit down. Daniel didn't. What happened? Hospital security alarm went off an hour ago. Power outage hit their grid. By the time backup came online, baby's gone. The room seemed to tilt. What do you mean, gone? Gone, Reddick said flatly. Nurse on duty said a man in a maintenance jacket flashed ID. Said he was moving the infant to emergency care during the blackout. By the time they realized the wing hadn't lost power, he was gone. Daniel's jaw clenched. Any footage? Snow knocked the exterior cams. We're checking the inside feeds, but Reddick hesitated. One of my deputies swears he saw a black pickup heading north on County 9. That's 20 miles of back road into nowhere. Yeah, Reddick said quietly, which is where you come in. The storm clawed at his windshield as Daniel drove. Wipers screeched against ice. The radio crackle was static until finally Reddick's voice cut through again. Unit 7 to 9, backup's 30 minutes out. Don't do anything stupid. Daniel didn't respond. He couldn't. His mind was already ahead of him. On that baby, on Misty, on the photograph burned into his thoughts. A woman's face, smiling beside a man who wasn't her husband. And written behind it, forever starts when he's gone. Misty sat tense in the passenger seat, eyes fixed forward. The air between them hummed with something primal. Fear, anger, memory. Snow thickened until the road vanished entirely. Then, through the blur, Daniel saw a taillight ahead. Red smudges moving fast toward the tree line. He floored it. The chase ended at the old Spence cabin, where it all began. The black pickup skidded sideways and stopped near the porch. The driver's door flew open. A man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, face hidden behind a wool cap and scarf. Daniel slammed his brakes, jumped out, gun drawn. Police. Don't move. The man froze, one hand raised. Easy, he shouted over the wind. I'm not who you think. Put the baby down. Daniel barked. He saw it then, a small bundle in the man's arm, wrapped in a white blanket. Emma's faint cry pierced through the howl of the storm. I'm her uncle, the man shouted. You don't understand, Brian wasn't her father. The words hit Daniel like a slap. What? But before he could process it, Misty lunged forward, barking, snarling. The man stumbled backward, slipping on the ice, shielding the baby with his body. Call her off, he yelled. She doesn't know me. Daniel hesitated. His instincts warred with his training. The man's eyes weren't wild or cruel. They were terrified. Misty, Daniel commanded, low and sharp. Heel. She froze mid-snarl, panting, trembling. The man slowly got to his feet, clutching the infant close. My name's Joel Spence, he said. This cabin's mine. Inside. The storm howled through the cracks of the old roof as they faced each other across the dim room. Misty paced between them, torn, confused, as if memory fought instinct. Daniel's gun stayed low but ready. Start talking, he said. Joel unwrapped the blanket just enough to show the baby's face, alive, crying softly. Her mother was my sister. Daniel blinked. Lena? Joel nodded. She changed her name after she left me. Said she needed to disappear. Disappear from what? Joel sank into the chair near the cold fireplace. His hands shook, not from the cold, Daniel realized, but from something deeper. From Brian. He wasn't who he said he was. He had debts, gambling, dangerous people after him. When she tried to leave, he threatened to take the baby. I helped her run. Gave her the truck, the fake IDs, the cash. Daniel's mind spun. You're saying you plan their escape? I planned to meet them after the storm, Joel said, eyes glassy. But they never showed. When the news said they'd crashed, I thought, his voice cracked. I thought she was dead. Until I saw the report about a baby found with Misty. He looked at the dog. She was mine, you know, before Lena took her. When I saw the picture in the paper, I knew she'd found them. I came for her. For the baby. Daniel's voice softened but stayed steady. You left a dead man in the snow. Joel's eyes met his. He deserved worse. Lightning flared outside, turning the room white for an instant. The wind roared against the windows. Then a shape appeared in the doorway, shadowed, heavy. Reddick. Put the kid down, Spence, he said, his revolver steady. We've got the place surrounded. Joel didn't move. You don't understand. I understand you crossed state lines, stole an infant, and possibly killed 2 people. Reddick snapped. Hand her over. Daniel stepped forward. Wait. He's not lying. Reddick's eyes narrowed. You sure about that? Daniel's voice was low. He's Lena's brother. She was running from Brian. There's proof in the locket. Reddick hesitated, but not long enough. Joel moved suddenly, shielding the baby, backing toward the back door. Misty barked once, sharp as a gunshot. The real one followed. A crack split the air. Joel stumbled, gasped, and fell against the wall, blood blooming through his jacket. Daniel spun. What the hell did you do? Reddick lowered his gun, face unreadable. He went for the door. He had a child in his arms. Daniel dropped beside Joel, pressing his hands over the wound. Stay with me. You hear me? Stay. Joel's grip caught his wrist. His voice was barely a whisper. Promise me she'll be safe. I swear. Joel's eyes found Misty one last time. Good girl, he breathed. Then his hand went slack. The baby cried, loud, piercing, alive. Reddick holstered his gun. He made his choice. Daniel rose slowly. Did he? Or did you? Reddick's jaw tightened. Watch your tone, Hope. But Daniel saw it then. Something off in the sheriff's eyes. Cold, calculating. Not shock. Not guilt. Just resolve. And he remembered something Reddick had said days ago. Looks like the storm covered more than just the road. Daniel's voice was quiet. You knew about the Callaways' money. Reddick didn't blink. What money? The accounts. The cash in that box. You were first on the case when their names popped up. You knew they were hiding something worth killing for. Reddick sighed. You always were too damn smart for your own good. Then he raised the gun again. The next second stretched thin as wire. Daniel dove sideways as the gun thundered. Glass shattered. Misty lunged, slamming into Reddick's arm. The bullet went wide. They crashed into the table, splintering wood. The gun slid across the floor. Daniel scrambled for it, but Reddick was already on him, heavy, desperate. Years of frustration, and fear poured into every punch. You think you're some kind of hero? Reddick hissed. You don't even see what this town's built on. Daniel twisted, slammed his elbow into the sheriff's ribs, and shoved him back. Misty barked wildly, circling, teeth bared. Reddick went for the gun again. Daniel was faster. He grabbed it, leveled it, and froze, because behind Reddick, the baby was lying on the floor where Joel had fallen, wailing. Don't, Daniel said. Reddick smiled faintly, eyes dead. You won't shoot me. You can't stand losing another. The sound that followed wasn't Daniel's gun. It was Misty's snarl as she lunged. Reddick spun, fired once, and went down hard. The gun clattered across the floor. For a long moment, nothing moved except the snow drifting through the broken window. Then Daniel crawled forward, pulling the crying baby into his arms. Misty limped toward him, bleeding from the shoulder, but alive. He held her face between his hands. You did good, girl, he whispered, voice breaking. You did good. By dawn, the storm had eased. Backup finally arrived to find 2 bodies, 1 infant, and an exhausted officer sitting on the porch with a dog in his lap. Reddick's crimes unraveled fast. Bribes, smuggling, the Callaway money laundered through false reports. Lena had discovered it while cleaning accounts for the sheriff's office months before. She'd tried to run, but the storm caught her first. Reddick had planned to recover the cash through her husband, until the wreck ruined everything. It took one dog, one child, and one stubborn cop to drag it all into the light. Weeks passed. The snow melted. The town thawed back into uneasy quiet. Emma was placed in protective custody until the courts sorted her guardianship. Misty stayed with Daniel. The vet stitched her shoulder, but the scar remained, a small, silent reminder. One evening, Daniel drove back to the edge of the forest where it had all begun. He stood beside Misty, watching the sunset burn orange through the trees. He dug a small hole near the birch line and placed a locket there, covering it with earth. "For Lena," he murmured, "and for Joel." Misty pressed against his leg, warm and steady. He thought of Grace again, not as a ghost this time, but as a whisper in the quiet. Maybe saving one life didn't erase the pain of losing another, but maybe it was enough to start breathing again. He turned toward the truck, baby Emma's soft coo echoing from the back seat. Foster care until her future was decided. Daniel smiled faintly. "Looks like we're not done looking out for her, huh?" Misty wagged her tail. The wind carried the scent of thawing pine and distant rain. For the first time in years, Daniel felt something like peace.